So here is my little trio of Apple Macs. We have at the bottom a bog standard MacBook Pro 2019 with 16 gigabit of RAM and a terabit of storage. Next up, we have the bog standard one with 128 gigabits of storage, and the only thing that's been upgraded is the memory. And on top we have my old early 2015 MacBook 12-inch, which has been through a lot with me and is a fantastic device in every way, except it just can't really handle the 4K video in a way that makes me productive. And I'm going to go exactly into how much that is and what it means to the productivity, certainly with my workflow anyway. So I made the move to Mac in 2015 with an early 2015 MacBook 12-inch. Fantastic machine, very light. You can pick it up with literally 2 or 3 fingers, carry it from office to desk, from your plane seat to wherever. If you move around a lot, the MacBook 12-inch was the perfect machine, and I adopted from the Windows platform very quickly. Amazing. Even the one USB port I kind of liked because, for example, once I was working on the beach and this horrible little kid threw a whole bucket of sand in my direction. Half of it landed on my computer and there's no fan. There is literally one USB-C port. Blow out the sand and you're good to go. And unfortunately, I was waiting for 4 years for an update to the platform, a substantial update, and then they cancelled it. So I decided, I looked at all sorts of different options, from keeping that and having a Mac Mini to going to the 27-inch and the 1-inch iMacs, to getting an old MacBook Pro, Mac Pro, and then the 13, 15 and the 16-inch had not come out by then. But it was pretty clear that even now, the 13-inch MacBook Pro is a great machine. I absolutely love it, but it is too heavy for certain scenarios. It's very difficult to carry around with one hand, for example. And this may seem silly, but it's even if you're office bound, one hand you've got your mobile, the other one you want to keep your screen open. It's too hot to work on your lap if you're in an airplane and you're worried about somebody reclining forward. And it's basically, it's too, if you're, for example, out in the middle of nowhere on a camping chair, which of course you will do, it's too hot, it runs too hot. It uses too much power as well. If you're out and about, I can run the MacBook 12-inch on a Goal Zero 400 lithium for ages. But the MacBook Pro, it just chews through that very quickly. The Goal Zero 100, which is 100 watt hours, I can get around all day with the MacBook 12-inch. Doing the things that I need to do, and even doing the same things with the 13-inch MacBook Pro, it has chewed through that within half a day. So the question remains, I have gone fully cloud. I have been for years, both in my main business, but also on my my personal computing, all my emails in the cloud, all my storage is in the cloud. I've been using Google for the Google Apps on all of my businesses for a while. So can I live with the base 128 gigabits and still edit the 4K videos, or do I need to go to a terabit? Now on the 12-inch, I had 500 gigs and only 8 gig of memory. Obviously, if I'm going to have this for a few years, I'm going to max it out to 16 gig, but can I live with 128 gig of storage was the question, because you save yourself a lot of money and it was available immediately. whereas I've had to wait 2 or 3 weeks for the 1 terabit version.
Problem is that once you get into trying to spec a MacBook 13 Pro 2019 and then go through all of the options that you seem to see on YouTube videos encouraging you to up spec, etc., etc., it is a minefield, and therefore I did the only thing I could really do. It was buy a bog standard device but with a 16 gig of memory, because they're not available in the stores, at least in the UK. They've all got 8 gigabits, and see if I could live with 128 gigabyte in this new cloud-based world, which, if I wasn't doing video processing, I could. I'll be honest about that. But with video processing, I couldn't, and I'll show why in a second. And I bought the 1 terabit one with the 16 gigabit of RAM, and that should do me for another 4 or 5 years. It's amazing how good these devices are now. But yeah, there was one key reason why I couldn't live with the 128 gig, and I'll show you the performance reasons of how that impacts you. Even with fast SSD external drives, how it impacts your workflow, and it is quite substantial. And again, I honestly don't think that you need to be up speccing to the higher processing power when they are this good. But that is a personal preference, and it's up to you. So yeah, if we come to this one, we can see that it has slightly different specs. And the all-important one is when you click on the storage, that it has only 121 gigabytes of memory, of which only 60 gigabit is available, and I have literally tried to put as little as possible onto this. So you can kind of see that my present kind of video files for editing an average video runs at about 30 to 40 gig with the native files, and then it runs at about another 10 gig of cache, and it outputs a 4 gig file. So really there isn't enough storage on this device to be able to edit 4K video, full stop, without having serious penalties in terms of the speed of the workflow process. And the main reason for that is that even the fastest hard drives that you can buy externally, which cost you more or less the same amount as the internal storage, you are looking at about 1400 megabits a second versus the internal, which are 2400, 2300, 2200. And that does make a difference when you're processing the video. It doesn't make a difference on the importing, so I could keep my native files on there, but in reality I always end up, you don't just do one video and then do another video. You don't waterfall videos like that. My workflow involves me editing 3 or 4 videos at a time. So even if I keep the what I call the originals off on the hard disk, and there isn't really a performance penalty, if you're running 3, 4, 5 videos being edited at the same time, I will have at least 10 gig for each one of those, and it just doesn't fit. So, but other than that, if I kept to just cloud, Google Clouds, Google Drive, iCloud, etc., it is perfectly livable, and it is a very, very fast machine. But then the problem is you know, by now the price point of an SD card for the average camera, including what's in this one, what's in my GoPro, what is in my Mavic Air, and all the other devices, is 128 gigabytes. So what it means when I'm out and about and traveling, which is the main purpose of a laptop, I cannot back up or export the entire drive, the entire SD card, anywhere near onto the drive. And whilst cloud is fantastic for many things, for storing and viewing video and pictures, you know, media, it's just, you know, the bandwidth just isn't there. Even if you have the local bandwidth with you know, 10 gigabit Ethernet, etc., the minute you come out of that office or you move away from the few meters in which the 10 gigabit will work on most cables or cabling that you'll probably have, then you're in trouble. I must add as well, I'm very happy that I did this video because I was about to send back the wrong machine to Apple. Now that would have been fun, not. And so one of the main other reasons, I mean, I didn't do this experiment just because I love you. It is an experiment that I obviously wanted to try in terms of saving some money, but in the end I recognised that I'd probably spend that money on external storage anyway, and it wasn't my primary driver. The difference between a £1,500 and a £2,000 laptop that you're going to keep for 4 or 5 years, and is what I spend day in, day out, hour in, hour out in front of. It would be a false economy. The main reason is that I could order this with 16 gig of RAM and the bog standard spec otherwise, and it would arrive, it said, in 2 or 3 days, but it actually arrived the next day. I bought it on Black Friday in the afternoon, and it arrived on Saturday. Whereas when I was speccing it with anything else, 256, which I could probably got away with and would have been probably my first choice if I was being frugal, 512, which meant I could literally just transfer my existing 512 gigabit profile from my existing MacBook straight onto the device. But I thought I'd get a terabit, which will give me a little bit more headroom and allow this device to work a little bit longer, and if 8K becomes the norm, which it could well be very soon, then it will give me that headroom to be able to develop files which are significantly larger. So yeah, it was the time. They were giving me dates of like the 14th of December, and I had decided for a couple of weeks that I was going to do this. I decided for whatever reason that I would wait until Black Friday to get to see what offers were on, because before I have bought technology and then gone, wow, I didn't see that coming. And yeah, I really just didn't want to wait 2 weeks. So what this has allowed me to do with the wonderful 14-day returns process of Apple is buy the one that arrived quickly, and I thought maybe 80–90% sure I could have probably lived with. But very quickly people were telling me, no, you're completely wrong, and this is the reason. The reason being the speed of the onboard storage versus external storage is a lot faster at the moment, and that will affect the exporting and the processing of processing times, which is the main drag in my workflow, right? I mean, the biggest problem I had with the 12-inch MacBook is that not so much the export, so I could leave that for the time that I'll show you later that it took to export use the same video on the 3 different machines. But the main problem was the lag I was sometimes getting when editing some videos from the original content into the cut, rotated, processed, etc. video files. Sometimes it was, if I process 3 or 4 different files by rotating them, for example, GoPro files, which you have to turn around and export rather than just save, then it would lock up my machine for 5–10 minutes. And there's a limit to how many coffees you can go and have, etc. with those 5 or 10 minutes. So I did need the extra speed, but what I have found as well is that the extra speed of the onboard storage is worth it if you are editing 4K video. I don't know in terms of 1080p because it's not what I do. I just don't see the point really in today, and but obviously 8K is around the corner.
So why did I end up with the 1 terabyte and sending back the 128? Well, it all came down to not the speed of processing the video, because both of them were pretty good. I went from 53, 54 minutes to process my Land Rover video, which is probably somewhere there, on the 12-inch, which is not that bad. I mean, if you were, for a 4 to 5 year old machine, if you were on a strict budget, you can wait those 50 minutes. But it wasn't just that. It was there were lots of bottlenecks all the way. You couldn't see the preview, the video in real time. So With the 128 and the 1 terabyte, I can preview video in real time. The export speed really isn't that much of a deal. That same 53 minutes to export a 10 to 15 minute file on the 12-inch on the 128GB using external memory was about 13 minutes. On the internal 1 gig is down to about 8 minutes. That does make a difference, but you could, in theory, still live. The problem is just being able to travel and move things around, and ultimately being able to edit a few videos at a time is very difficult. And so I went with the 1 terabit, and this video was initially recorded back in December of 2019. And 4 or 5 months later, I'm editing not just the 4 or 5 videos that I was then, but about 8, 9, 10 videos at a time. And so really, I mean, the 128 would have been really impossible for me to work with. But having said that, I'm still amazed that I went from an i7 top of the range Windows machine, which the fan would come on every 5 minutes. And people said, as a power user, you couldn't use a mobile processor, MacBook 12-inch, and they were wrong. You can. With the OS and the way that a Mac is spec'd, I'd never seen a blue screen. It just worked. And to be honest, I could have still edited video on it. It was a pain. It took too long, but it was still a good computer. The MacBook 13, honestly, 8 minutes to export 4K video is, yeah, I can go and get a coffee. And I can still use the computer at the same time. Okay, the fan is a bit noisy, but I still can, if I want to ignore the fan, get on with my stuff. So, yeah, obviously the same will remain if you want to spec this up with the higher processing power, etc. You obviously just get that speed down. But honestly, I still don't see the benefits. If I went with the highest end processor in there, I'd spend a lot of money. And what would I get? The 8-minute export down to 4 minutes. It's an insignificant period of time for me, at least. I don't run a diary. I mean, I do have a certain level of OCD and do have 15-minute slots in my diary, but sometimes you need to just relax and say, it doesn't matter. And on that note, stay safe in our new lockdown period, and make more videos with your brand new MacBook.